Well, it is indeed appropriate to pause and to reflect on the events some 10 years ago. And for NASA, I'd like to say that as the premier agency of its type anywhere in the world, you have played an important role in our nation's efforts to deal with the challenges relevant to that day. And I'll speak a little bit about that in a minute, but I recall a young president who went to Rice University and launched our nation onto an effort to conquer and explore space. And he said that we choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. You do very difficult work, and I want to congratulate the administrator and all of the staff and all of the employees that were part of the NASA family, along with the contractors, for the work that you do. Now, President Kennedy talked about our efforts in space that day, but a year earlier when he gave his inaugural address, he said that we would, as a nation, interact with others in the world, whether they meant us well or whether they meant us evil, that as a nation we would pay any price, bear any burden, and meet any challenge. Well, 10 years ago on 9/11, we had to be introduced to ourselves again and to face the adversity of that moment. And since that point, some 2 million have served in war zones. These are 2 million Americans who have volunteered on behalf of their country. Over 6,000 have lost their lives. Tens of thousands have been injured. There are over 500,000 who have filed for various types of disability, veterans' disability claims. We have spent and invested in these efforts significant sums of the public treasury. So it's clear that those words spoken in 1961 still resonate in the American soul. That is, that we are prepared to pay the price and to bear the burden. But I want to focus for a minute on NASA's role. I have a friend here who's the chief technologist. I understand he's trying to retire. Mr. Administrator, we should keep him here. But I want those who are engaged here at NASA to think and reflect for a minute about NASA's role. Because in our Predator drone program, there are aeronautics and technological advances that began here at NASA. And the helicopters that went into a sovereign country to go after Osama bin Laden, as the president promised during his campaign and followed through, that if we had actionable information, we would go wherever the trail of evidence took us to get bin Laden. And on those helicopters, there was technology that began in its infancy here at NASA. That when we saw the first responders respond at the Pentagon or in New York, the fire protective gear they wore were developed in conjunction with a project between NASA and FEMA and the firefighters so that our first responders could be better protected. When we look at the machinery that was used to cut through the rubble, the search for survivors, the life shears, again, developed in a partnership, as is NASA's normal mode of operation, in a partnership with a private sector company to develop the ability to use NASA's technological superiority to help meet the challenges. And that is used, it was used in the Oklahoma City bombing. It was used in New York at 9/11. So NASA has played an important role. And you're going to hear from Frank a little bit later on, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but you also had a unique view of what was taking place. But anything and everything connected to this effort that was focused at dealing with this challenge, there you can find in the work that NASA has done a role that your work has played. And as we go forward as a nation, as we deal with other challenges, Senator Nelson mentioned that NASA has faced challenges with the loss of 2 of our shuttle flights. We know that there have been other terrorist attacks, like at Oklahoma City bombing. You know, there have been events in our country's past, and there will be, in all likelihood, events that challenge all of us in our country's future. But if we would just hold firm to what that young president said, that we as a nation have to be prepared to bear the burden and to pay the price, we can turn tragedy into triumph. And we've done that by seeking out those responsible for 9/11. And, you know, when the Oklahoma City bombing took place, federal installations had to become better protected, but they're open for business. When the church was bombed, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, yes, precautions had to be taken, but Baptist churches open up every Sunday, and the doors are flung wide open all across our land. When we had the incident at Columbine High School, we didn't shut our schools down. Tens of thousands of schools are open for business today so that we can develop a new generation of scientists and engineers to continue to propel our nation and NASA forward. And so is the case with the attacks of 9/11. Because no matter whether the view is from the space station or the view is right here on the ground, the entire world knows something with a certainty. And that is 10 years after 9/11, America is still open for business. We are still a nation that is committed in every respect to our ideals, and that we, as President Kennedy said, whether those who mean us well or those who mean us evil, they should be aware of our commitment to ourselves, to our nation, and to generations that will follow. Thank you.
Our next speaker is U.S. Representative